Okay, let's talk about the Colts
Mhm.
because we were joking about this last week, saying, well, the last time these two teams played each other in Jacksonville, everyone thought that Indy were going to roll in and win and the playoffs, and then they got completely destroyed. Ollie, I was shocked at the performance, not just of Matt Ryan, but I guess everyone today for the Colts. Matt Ryan, 195 yards passing, 16 of 30 completions, 3 interceptions on the day. Trevor Lawrence, not too bad, but the Colts are in a bit of a sticky predicament now. Do you think, and this might sound ridiculous, do you think Matt Ryan has regressed a bit in the offseason, or do you think he's just in a new situation where he's struggling, or can they save this in a few weeks?
Oh, he's really struggling. I mean, the big thing to note was they didn't have their starting two wide receivers, right? Their top two guys, Pittman and Pierce. Both those guys, complete freaks on the outside, and they increase your margin of error. And that is a team coming into the season who had no depth at wide receiver. It was the giant question mark hanging over them all off season. They were super duper arrogant about their young wide receivers, and it turns out they all stink, as expected. And they both two wide receivers weren't playing, and no one could get any kind of separation. I posted this spider chart to Twitter that I think people, if they're listening, should go and have a look at because it is genuinely hilarious. It basically takes the NFL next gen tracking data, which is all the chips and the pads of the players, and shows you the average amount of separation from each receiver from the cornerback or whoever covering them during the game. The league average is 2.91 yards, so just about 3 yards. That's kind of the throwing window in the NFL. They have no one getting even close to that. They have some people on zero. They have Mo Alley Cox, 1.86 yards, Patman, under 1 yard, Strachan 1.64 yards. So that is already brutal. And then we spoke about on Friday doing the preview show, like Matt Ryan just isn't that guy anymore. He's not someone who can fit the ball into tight windows. He's had to change his game. He just doesn't have the zip on the ball anymore. So he's become a landmark thrower, which means everything has to be clicking. It is late career Peyton Manning. It's what happened with the Colts when they had Philip Rivers. And when they got Ryan, I think they thought because last season he could still move pretty well in the pocket. There was still just enough torque on the ball. That's just not there anymore. And that stunned me because I thought we were getting the guy from Atlanta last year where there was at least 2 years left of playing kind of the second Hall of Fame part of Tom Brady's career before he rediscovered his arm strength. That mid window just before the Roethlisberger decline, not the final Roethlisberger year, not the final Manning year. And we're getting into grenade territory with him where it has to be up and over, drop it to a point and hope someone can go get it. And to do that, you need, like I said, everything to be clicking on offense, right? Run game, scheme, all that stuff. And guys have to be open. You can't drop it in a bucket and have someone within a yard of them because then it becomes a fight for the ball. And you're either going to turn the ball over or they're going to break the play up. And the percentage you suggested there show exactly what happens. So that they should be really, really worried. And what's further to that is offensive line issues and just not running the ball. I do not know what's going on with that staff where you have Jonathan Taylor, you have this offensive line that's struggling. The best thing you can do is slam the ball into a wall and hope for the best and hope that Jonathan Taylor can hit daylight. That's what they should be doing. Instead, they're dropping back over and over again with this depleted receiving core.
The one thing that I've got down from my notes, sitting with my glasses half down, writing during this game, was we didn't see much blitzing at all, and the Jaguars seem to consistently get the receivers into like unfair situations. You've seen Zed Jones, Christian Kirk get lots of yardage, where that sort of plan from Indianapolis for me is not going to work for them down the stretch. And I think we both picked them to win the AFC South.
Mm-hmm.
At least I think we all did. It was a sweep, and we got massive abuse online for it. And now they're sitting 0-1-1, and I agree. This was a team that relied consistently on the run with Jonathan Taylor and the backups last year. They're not doing as well on the run this year. 54 yards today for Jonathan Taylor on 9 carries. They've got rid of Philip Lindsay, and they've got obviously Hines had 1 yard. Oh, sorry, 1 carry for 0 yards, and Dillon had 1 carry for 3 yards. That's not going to win you a game if you're playing Jacksonville, if you're playing the Packers, or whoever in this league. And I think they're in a really, really worrying position now in that division because look, Jacksonville weren't incredible, but you can see they're improving. For all the faults that the Colts have, Jacksonville are on a journey and they're trying to improve. And if you can see social media on Sunday night, people crying out for Nick Foles, that's where it goes for me.
No,
Like
that's
there was
not.
literally people on Twitter
Oh,
asking for
that's
Nick Foles,
insane.
which is nuts, isn't it?
Yeah, that's just Twitter being Twitter. I don't buy anything to that. The problem they have is they have a load of really good players, and they're all playing terribly, and that is really really concerning because that speaks to some kind of concern with the culture, something going on. They got their tails whooped last year in Jacksonville in an embarrassing way, and they all hid behind the shield of Carson Wentz, right? Carson Wentz took all of that flack on board. The owner, wobbling onto his private jet to do a video saying that it's all Carson Wentz's fault, essentially. Everyone else is fine. We were going to win a Super Bowl. It's all Carson Wentz's fault. You go through some of the stuff they said after the game, those players, the disrespect they put on Jacksonville, and to come out in week 2 and to play like that. Ryan Kelly's a really good player. Quentin Nelson's a really good player. Jonathan Taylor's really good. DeForest Buckner's really good. Quincy Pay is really, really good. Stephon Gilmore was the defensive player of the year and is still playing at a pretty decent level, right? They've got so many good players and they are not playing. And I don't know what that is. And this is not like some kind of weird up in the air thought exercise. They are not lining up properly. This is the most basic stuff imaginable. They are not getting off the ball. Something is strange there. And look, this happens with a lot of teams. And I think through the fog of the season, they still have more talent than anyone in the AFC South. They're not 0-2. It's 0-1-1. I know they've been terrible against 2 teams people think are pretty bad. I still think they'll figure it out. I think that staff's good enough. I think they have more good players than the rest of the division. But it has been as bad a start as could be imagined.
They have the Kansas City Chiefs in week 3, and currently the Chiefs are 3-point favourites. And we can talk about that on the pick show next week. But as it stands, Ollie, that's incredible value. Do you think if we got to week 4 or week 5 though with Frank Reich and Chris Ballard that maybe Jim Irsay might do something? You were talking there about him throwing Carson Wentz under the bus. I don't know if you've seen the social media tonight. He was sitting outside on a table and signing footballs for all the Colts fans, but you could hear audible boos. And I'm talking boos, boos, boos. It was like something from a TV show, and he's not going to be a happy bunny. He'll be a bit like Jerry Jones was last week after the first Cowboys game of the season.
I mean, what's he going to do in season? You can change the GM. He's not going to have the chance to do anything. Change the head coach. Who are you going to get? Who's going to be better than Frank Reich? Person doesn't exist. What they are suffering for here is the long-term consequence of doing this year-to-year cycle. And that every year is an uphill battle because they have to figure out exactly what works for everyone. And it doesn't really click in until week 7, week 8. And we've done this with them for years now, where they'll put together a 2-3 week run and everyone says, oh, dark horse, you don't want to go into Indianapolis in the playoffs. And then we get to the playoffs and Indianapolis is nowhere to be seen because they've missed the playoffs again. And it's been going this way since 2014. I think they've had 1 or 2 playoff games since 2014. Yeah. I think that's right. And I think we are all conditioned to they're supposed to be good because of Peyton Manning and Andrew Luck. And they've just not been since 2014. So, I still think it's a long, long season. The AFC South is still not good. It's not as if the AFC South is magically really good now. The Texans are mediocre. Jacksonville is mediocre. The Titans are mediocre, looking towards being good. And the Colts are mediocre right now towards being bad. So that's not a far way to bridge over the course of the season.
I enjoyed watching the Jags, and I think that says it all about my enjoyment of certain football games. Talking about enjoying our podcast on Carson Wentz this week comes out on Tuesday. That was a joke. Some of his plays tonight were amazing, Ollie, and I know we could probably have a documentary on some of them, and I've seen some of your tweets about throwing the ball and stuff.